G'day and welcome to the Campfire Project and to another panel discussion, this time on International Men's Day. Today I'm here with Andrew Bryce. G'day Andrew, how are you?
I'm doing very well and very honoured to be invited.
Fantastic. And then we have Joseph McGuire from Ireland. How are you, Joseph?
Very well indeed, Alan. Delighted to be here. Thank you so much for the invitation.
Excellent. And to Kenny Mammarella-D'Cruz, how are you, mate?
Good. Little sheepish, actually, but good.
I think that COVID's done that to a lot of us, because I know that the three of us, or four of us, haven't actually had conversations much at all this year. And the panel discussions have been reasonably quiet because of so much that people have been doing. Andy, I know that you just moved recently, didn't you? Or was that some time ago now?
It is it's a year and a half.
Yeah, time got away.
Yes.
Big time.
But yeah, we're where my wife grew up in Staffordshire. And so she's just fit right in, and I'm kind of finding my way around and establishing myself, I guess you could say. Excellent.
Well, with it being International Men's Day, and you know, some of that might come into the conversation of how you know, life has been directing us and everything else. But I'd like to ask each of you, and that what does International Men's Day mean to you, and what's the purpose of it, and why is it important? You mind if I start with you, Andy?
Well, sure, because I haven't thought about it much. You know, I turned 72 this year, and in 1985, I walked into a room with 200 men. It was the Sterling Men's Weekend, which lasted from Saturday morning to Monday morning, and was just probably the most amazing experience ever. I was 35, I walked into this room and I thought, why would I choose to spend a weekend with men and no women? What am I doing? And it turned out to be the most amazing experience to come out of that. And the change, I think, for me was I had been a pleaser. I was an apologist for men. And, oh, you know, my girlfriends would say, oh, you're a real man, you're not like them. And so there was such a division. We're kind of, what I realize is we're often cut out of the herd when we get into a relationship. And we want to be in a relationship. We want that interaction, and we want the love and everything that gives. But we often lose men in our lives because we get into this committed relationship. And what I did from that point for 12 years was I was a volunteer leader, and it took 20 to 25 hours a week. Breakfast meetings, if you were 1 minute late, you did push-ups. There was phone meetings, all kinds of leadership, and I had about 110 men in my group, my division of the group, and I was responsible for them. And I saw the value of sticking together. Like it's a big, you know, the International Men's Day is global, but it's hard, like when we're meeting here, we can actually connect with each other. So what we had was small pods of men, like a team of 8 to 10, and they met every week. And the purpose was to support each other to be the best man they could be, to be honorable men, to keep their word. And that's been something that I've supported. You know, I appreciate large groups and getting together, but the intimacy and then the support that's available is is essential to us if we're going to be who we are, because it doesn't matter how much our woman or our wife, or how, whatever the term is, loves us, shouldn't be accountable for everything we need. And some of what we need comes from other men. And I think the International Men's Day underlines that, opens it up, and maybe points a finger at some of the consequences of being alienated and alone because of the high suicide rates across the world for men. So I think it shines a light on where we are, and we can see where we could improve and where we can go.
Excellent. And Kenny, you work with men all the time as part of your profession, and the men that are coming to you, are you noticing anything around them? Are they, working with them, if obviously you see the connection of working with men and how they grow. And from what Andy was saying, how does that fit in with what you do?
For me, the reason I feel sheepish is because I've been so busy with the men that I've been working with. They've been, since lockdown, we've held a men's group every day online, and it's been invaluable because people have been triggered, people have been in trouble, people have been, not just men, the people in their lives, trying to fix things, trying to be in control. And the object of the exercise was for us, or is for us, to get together and speak things out rather than go into the head and try and fix or suppress it and lash out on other people or lash in on ourselves with dodgy behavior. So that's been busy, and training lots of people. There are about 20 closed groups, elder men's groups, young men's groups. It's been relentless. And what's been amazing for the last 3 months, probably 2 months actually, is the availability that men have had, including myself, hugely, to feelings that we knew as stories. And for me, I felt the most horrendous things that I've known as a story, but I could actually feel it. And rather than fixing it or fleeing from it, I needed to feel into it pretty fearlessly, I guess, and through it. And in order to do that, I've needed to be safe. I've needed to feel safe. So the men around have enabled me to safely do that. And if I lose my marbles, I lose my marbles. So we have been deep in it. Also, now my men's group training is accredited and all of that. So we're training therapists, we're training people all over the country, we're training people all over the world. It's passing it on. And what I haven't done is what I usually do, which is, put things out on social media and the newsletter and all the public stuff. And for me this year, it's not time. I haven't had the energy. I just haven't had it in me to do any of that public facing razzmatazz. It's been intimate, it's been sacred, and it's been really necessary for us to just drop into what we've been surviving and be more of ourselves. And for me, International Men's Day is all about authenticity, male or female or whatever. And it's a recognition and an honouring of all the men who've been good in our lives and all the men who've been bad in our lives, including ourselves, because this happened. Now, what am I going to do with it? What do I need to unlearn about myself, and how do I get present and connected so I can extend from my authenticity into the world and live the world that I want to be in and that I want to pass on?
Brilliant. And Joseph, as a profiler, being able to see behind the mask that people carry with them, how does that all resonate with you? What have you actually been seeing in the clients that you've had, in men in particular?
Yeah, well, I've been just listening to Andy and Kenny there. I'm quite inspired by what they've been saying and the experiences they've been talking about. I guess my experience has been different in general, just before I get directly to the question, because I haven't really been directly engaged in men's groups other than when I was playing football many, many years ago. And I kind of shied away from the all-male environment because generally I found that women were a lot more open. And I seem to attract a lot of women in my life in either a personal or professional capacity who were just open to sharing and engaging in a whole different way, where most of the men I met on whatever level were blokes, and we don't have emotion, all that stuff. And it took me a long time to start to cultivate friendships where guys were willing to open up and share and show the vulnerability, and to acknowledge that there was actually strength in vulnerability. What I've been seeing more recently in terms of the work I've been doing is a lot more men willing to acknowledge the fear, the deep, deep fear that people are experiencing and have experienced. And I guess the fear, a lot of the fear is being triggered that we're experiencing in life, everyday life here with the COVID and all that stuff. And like we've had the longest lockdown in Europe, it looks like we're going into another one. It's triggering a lot of stuff in people. And the fear in people's faces is so evident anyway. But more men are willing to acknowledge, oh shit, I've been carrying all this stuff. How do I begin to deal with it? Now, I'm conscious I'm no longer working as a therapist. I was a complementary therapist for 30 years. I'm no longer in that field. But there is more of that coming back into the conversations I'm having with people. Guys starting what are ostensibly business conversations, bringing in the personal and willing to acknowledge, this stuff is really impacting on my life and on my performance. So I'm very interested to see where that goes over the next probably a few years, actually, I would suspect, given the impact all this is having and the legacy effects that are likely to be left. And then, as you know, as a profiler, when we deal with clients, we're mirroring, or they're mirroring stuff to us. So I've had to look at a lot of my own stuff as well. In particular, that in terms of my own personal exploration, I was very resistant to listening to Jordan Peterson for a long time, but I've been listening to him quite a lot more recently, and Gabor Mate, and it's really brought home to me a lot of the stuff I wasn't dealing with. So as I've opened up, I guess that's also facilitated a different level of conversation, a different depth of conversation with people. And again, as you know, as a profiler, the ability to listen as much as to observe allows people to open, and that's also been invaluable, again, not just to me but to the people I've been engaging with.
I think it's important to remember, I know they talk about having 2 ears and 1 mouth, but we've also got 2 eyes as well, and using them in that proportion. But I always say as well with the mouth, before you make statements, ask all the questions and just hold that space, which I know Kenny's expert at with the men that he works with, just holding their space, listening, taking in what they're feeling, and helping them to actually, as you said, take ownership of it and immerse yourself in it. Cool. I don't know if you can hear that clap of thunder, but looks like we're about to get a storm here. So could get wet.
We got a clap.
Yeah.
Happy International Men's Day.
God is applauding.
Approval from on high.
Could I speak to what Joseph just said?
Please.
2 things struck me. One is the team playing, and the other one's the corporates. And what I love has happened, for me, the difference between a man and a boy in a nutshell is that a man includes the feminine, which is collaborating rather than just competing, listening rather than making a noise, responding rather than reacting, etc. And what has happened since the first lockdown around me is, with the corporate work and the corporate talks I've been doing, people have realized that companies have realized that they've got no choice but to build good teams rather than have people compete with each other so they can squeeze the living daylights out of them. And the reason they need to build good teams is because someone might get ill, or someone might have an issue, or someone might be in grief, or someone might whatever. So to collaborate, to have each other's backs, and to actually enjoy the buzz rather than being separate and competitive and, hiding my answers from the test or whatever. It's like people have enjoyed it more, but to be working together like that, it's the only way that the organizations can afford to know that the job will be done. Because as a team, they'll do it. As individuals who are going to have the pressure on them and compete with each other, if one's down, then the whole team or project might be down. And I've really loved the way that that's opened up. And it's different cultures. And it's interesting for me that the conversation has come up about men and passion, because very often a passionate man, an excited man, can be deemed an angry man or a bullying man. So issues like this have come up where there's space for including, well, not so much, when that comes up, very often I've had black women in the audience saying, that's the same for us, because we can't be seen as angry black women. And it's like, oh my God, we're allowed to have these conversations to include different sexes, different cultures, even different classes, where it could be said that the lower classes make more noise and the middle and upper more reserved and polite. But it's like now we can all come to the party, find out who we are, find out what we have in common, and let's share the buzz and let things happen. And it's been phenomenal. It's been absolutely phenomenal.
The way I look at it is that, COVID's been a pretty tough time from the death side of things, horrible. But from the other opportunities it brought forward, the realizations, men are changing. As you said, we're starting to open up. We're starting to have those conversations. The social isolation that we had was one of the issues that people were going through. I was talking about it today, that it was really, for me, it was only a physical distancing, not a social distancing. Because with the physical distancing, yes, I stayed away from people for their health, my health. But socially, with Zoom over the last year, 18 months, I've never been more active than ever before in my life. But I think it's got us all looking at things differently, and men have started to open up a bit more. They've been around their families. They haven't had that distraction of just being off at work and bringing the resources in. They've been around their families. They're hearing their kids more. They're hearing their partners. Now, yes, that brings a bit of angst through for some, because how do I connect? Because it's new to them. But for those that have started picking up and understanding it, their lives have improved. But again, I think that for a lot of them, it's been because of the camaraderie, the connection with other men who are willing to do the same thing. And so we're in this, hashtag we together. We only move forward when we do things together.
I think what I've observed, and the reason I mentioned the number of years I've achieved, is mainly the alive, is that I've getting a man into a men's group 35 years ago was like pulling teeth. Why would I want to do that? What's the motive? It's the cult, it's all kinds of things. Then after I moved to London from Canada 12 years ago, a friend of mine in Australia, Steve Wells, and I were putting together a men's weekend in London, and we couldn't get anyone, so we opened it up to women, and we had a wonderful weekend about men. So what I'm seeing over these decades is an openness, and I think it's from people like Jordan Peterson who can be provocative, and I don't agree with everything that he says, but part of listening is being able to have dialogue, and we're less isolated and afraid now. I feel like in the past, and to some degree now, a man is more afraid of being humiliated or seem to be stupid than any physical pain. I mean, we'll play football, we'll play rugby, we'll do anything, but then tell the truth? Oh, I don't know. Expose my heart? I don't know. But it seems like this is the time of humanity that people like Kenny and the rest of you are really able to get your teeth into this and to work with it, and people are willing, because that's the key. If they're not willing, you can't interact with them. So it's just it's a long view, but just appreciate what you're doing and that you can do it now.
What I see is the fact that men are starting to open up. International Men's Day, that's what we should be celebrating. A lot of people are saying, oh, we're just celebrating all the men. Well, there are some males that you probably won't want to celebrate their behaviours. But for those that are now, stepping up and willing to open up, that's what we should be celebrating. It's a change in the men, and the positive changes that we should be celebrating.
Clearly a lot more needed. I don't know what the situation is like in your jurisdictions, but the numbers of applications for divorce in Ireland have gone through the roof, and they're primarily from women. Certainly a lot of the work I've had, I wasn't looking for it, but a lot of the work that's come to me over the last 18 months has been people who've been in lockdown with people they thought they knew and loved. Mainly it's been women coming to me and looking for insights into how to get their partners, how to communicate with their partners, and ideally how to get their partners to open up. So there's still, like, we Irish have this great mythology that we're, happy, clappy people, life and soul of the party and full of joy and all that stuff. But it's a great mythology, and I think it's a big mythology, not a great mythology, not in that sense, but it's part of the reality that we're having to face now. And again, it will be very interesting to see what happens over the next few years. Interestingly enough, I have a call scheduled later today with a cousin of mine who works on a suicide helpline. And certainly the last conversation I had with him was that the numbers of male callers from as young as 8-9 years old were growing massively. So it'll be interesting to hear from him what the latest is from his world.
I know that the stats that we've been seeing before, well before COVID, children the age of 7 self-harming, the numbers that were going to hospital, it was escalating all the time. And a lot of the kids that commit suicide, and then the number of those that are successful was fairly high, but the ones we didn't know about were the ones that were suffering in silence, and we didn't see any of that. And that sort of progressed through, and it's extended into the violence and everything. But I think it's important for men to be able to understand themselves more, appreciate themselves for what they do and what they can do. And that way we can help the younger ones as well, because it's International Men's Day. Part of that celebration should be on the way in which we connect and interact with our families. And I think we need to be looking at that side of what we've been able to do. And I'd like to see the partners actually asking or telling the men, first of all, what they appreciate about them, what they've been doing right, instead of telling them what they've been doing wrong. And so talking about that, and the men then asking, well, how can I do that even better? And focus on the good stuff, and the stuff that we don't see as positive will start to drop away, because what you focus on, you get more of. If you focus on the negative, that's all you're going to be able to see is the negative. And I think communications between men and women has to increase.
Well, I started working with families about 7 or 8 years ago, and having worked with individuals for so long, there was a new dynamic to see. And what I've found is that there's another pandemic, and that is most families do not have a system where we can disagree and resolve issues. One thing that came up for me was where people don't want to listen, because if they listen, they might understand. And if they understand, they'll have to agree. And, I'm going to protect my perspective and I want to be right. So working with 2 and 3 generations in a specific family has really been educational, because most of the time I would have someone who would come to me, you know, Kenny and Joseph, you probably have people who call you and they're expressing their permission and willingness in that. Whereas if you get a family together, you're going to have people that may not be as willing as others. But the word listen has been said a number of times, and that's, to me, what we're not doing in the families. And I don't see how we could have individual men be any different than they are when they've been, you know, if you're going to be like that, go to your room, don't talk to me like that. They've never had this is men and women, boys and girls, have rarely been given the opportunity to express themselves and to ask questions and to be heard during and after traumatic events. So most of the individuals I work with have unresolved childhood events that no one actually allowed them to talk about. So they made up their minds about themselves and about the world at 5 years of age, or 9 or 15. And now what's good news today is, Kenny, you're giving the opportunity where we can actually get those things out again. And that's my work individually with men and women, but it's chronic. Families have no way of allowing a disagreement and allowing it to be resolved. And that's one of the things I think has gone into business, where some companies are, you know, have teams competing against each other in the same company, and there is no collaboration or cooperation and listening to understand. We generally listen to refute. So really, it's encouraging to hear that people are focusing on being listening, and the profiling sounds like it's a key part of it.
There's been a new conversation around me that I've really been opening up and exploring for the first time since lockdown, and that's to do with hormones. And I also hold women's groups, and I generally bring female hormones to the table, where so many of them haven't talked about not just their menstrual cycles, but perimenopause and menopause, and you know, there's so much shame attached to that, and same with the men with our hormones and aging. There's so much shame and so much avoidance. And when people do go back into their childhoods, as you say, Andrew, and it's exactly what's going on, is, you know, the boys have had to survive, and maybe now I'm safe enough, or now I can't carry on running, I have to look at this so I can move on. It's like part of it is being safe to go and talk about it if there are people there to listen. Otherwise, why even bother even thinking about it? Because it's just going to cause harm. And if I start talking about it, I might be abandoned, or I might be fixed or belittled or whatever. So if people are listening, then talk about it. But also to kind of get what was going on in the lives of others. And it's amazing how many people now realize, well, maybe my mother was going through this and it wasn't about me. And she didn't even notice or realize. Maybe my father was going through this because of this, and it wasn't about me. And it not only heals the past, but it brings so much information and so many tools as we become adults and as we age, to know what to expect, what not to pass on, and how to share the conversation. And I find it shockingly rare, men and women talking about our hormone journey and how it might affect our emotions, and our fuzziness and our fears and our insomnia and our whatever it is. And if one's going through it, then the couple, the family, other people will be going through it, whether they realize it or not.
Everything's connected, isn't it? What one person puts out, other people are going to take in.
Yeah, that whole area of psychological safety,
Mm.
that's so deep, isn't it? And when we begin to acknowledge the fact that we are dealing with, as Kenny and Andrew have been talking about there, generations of trauma, or people being traumatized and not having the tools, the skills, the awareness, and the fear and the anger and all that other stuff all balled up together. That's, to me, one of the potentially great gifts of this time we're living in, is that it offers us the opportunity. For some people, that's a very tentative opportunity, but for others, there's a massive opening to accept what we've been carrying, what's been passed on to us, what we could be passing on to others, and to recognize that we have, it is a golden opportunity in this time to open to the best of ourselves and to move that forward, to pass that on, instead of a lot of the stuff that we have been passing on. And certainly I have to acknowledge my own share in that with my own kids growing up. I remember a conversation that my ex-wife had. I was out teaching a stress management class in a major Dublin hospital, and my son was about 14 at the time, and he asked her where I was, and she said, "Oh, he's teaching a stress management class." And my son turned around and said to her, "Oh, he can't even manage himself." And that was pretty humbling to hear and to realize, I have a lot of stuff to deal with here. But the opportunities to grow now, particularly through not just gatherings like this, but the gatherings we're having, or the meetings we're having, whether it's single person, group, and particularly acknowledging that we've gone through major journeys ourselves and had to face and embrace the challenges and the changes. That creates a platform for people. They see that because we're communicating that, not just in our words, but in how we are, the presence we bring, that we're willing to express and demonstrate our own vulnerability and the learning that's gone with it. That creates a platform for people to say, just like it's like this big out breath, and then they can start to acknowledge their own stuff and in that place of safety.
I think it's a case of getting things, we've always had that attitude, we've got to be right. And I think we're actually shifting that to now where we want to get it right. And I think that's where things start to turn around. But I think it's taken the fact that, we've had to have the pandemic, so many more people realizing that, hey, I'm not the only one feeling this way. There's nothing to be ashamed of. There's nothing to be, hold against myself, and I shouldn't take criticism from other people, and therefore easier to actually start to reach out to people. And that's one of the things that I've been noticing that seems to be happening. So what about Kenny and Andrew? What have you noticed there?
I love it when people say Kenny and Andy, because my brother's name is Andy, and it was always Kenny and Andy. And when he was young, he thought his name was Kenny Andy. And little things like that can be so heart-opening. People talk about triggers into fear and triggers into... There are so many triggers into love. There are so many triggers into connection. There are so many triggers as opportunities to grow, to explore. And I smiled earlier on when you talked about being right, Alan, because I remember I was 35 years old. I moved back after living in Sydney for about 2.5 years and living out of the UK for 5 years. I moved back to the UK with my best friend who I met in Sydney, Kiwi guy. And I remember saying to him, "I don't know." And his face lit up. And he said, "In all the years I've known you, finally, I get an I don't know." Meanwhile, I was devastated because I didn't know. I was allowed not to know. I was programmed to fix and to make it okay and to take care and to keep running and keep my head down. And, you know, I had to know. There was no option to not know. I remember that moment and how it changed my life, and how on one hand I fell apart because I was devastated. That's death and rebirth. And then I came alive, and it's like, oh my God, does this mean that I'm allowed to be that useless, that I might be chucked because I don't know?
The freedom that comes with that, the weight that comes off your shoulders with that realization. That how many men actually get that opportunity to do that? So again, it's back to being around somebody else who's actually made that comment. So again, our realizations usually come through when we're dealing with other people, not so much just on our own. That's another reason why men really need to reach out to each other and open up to each other and find out that, hey, mate's gone through something similar that I've gone through, and then all of a sudden that pressure of carrying that around starts to dissipate.
Whatever is generally brought to the group, very often the first question is, who else has been through this, or who can relate to this, or who's going through it now? And the way that people's faces open when they realize they're not alone and there's nothing wrong with them. And then the next question very often is, what's your experience? How did you respond to this? And how did you get it wrong? And how did you get it right? So everyone can own their experience, and everyone can learn from each other rather than fix or save or go into the head. What I find tragic about the younger generation and quite damaging is, rather than turning to another person, they'll turn to the computer. And they look for trouble, and they look for justification. And even if they're looking for answers, what they type in, the algorithms will give them more trouble and holes to fall down, and they will believe it. And rather than turning to their heads or a computer, younger people are beginning to show up. And I did not want to work with younger people because I didn't want to influence younger people. But now we've started younger men's groups. Now it's like these younger people, once they learn how to communicate with me, with their friends, and then it goes with their brothers, with their fathers, it opens this up. But that was never there. So it's just building this bridge away from the computer, away from you're broken, this is what you have to buy, this is how you have to be to fix it, into who are you? And how can you move into who you are and have boundaries to therefore meet other people and life intimately?
See that you're combating the stuff that they're being told to do stuff and influencing them in that way, in a negative way, and you're asking them to think and influencing them in that way. So it's a different level of, not only different polarity as far as positive and negative, but it's a different way of actually influencing as well. That's why I always say it's the questions are the most important thing. First things that come out of somebody's mouth should be questions. It shouldn't be a statement. I've heard that the average is, they say when somebody has an issue that they're talking about, on average, it's 19 seconds before somebody jumps in with advice. You know, how much information you get in 19 seconds? The person hasn't even finished their sentence at that point. And I think that comes down to the fact that because of the emotional empathy, where we actually feel the other person's pain, and because so many people are feeling lost, their level of self-esteem is low, as soon as they feel someone else's pain, that's something they don't want to feel anymore. So they rush in to try and fix the other person, which is not about the other person, it's about fixing themselves. And we're denying that by saying, oh, we're there to help the other person. The more we can then, as you've said, look at ourselves and take ownership of our feelings and spend that time to actually understand where it's coming from, and you know, and taking the next steps from there, not rushing it and having conversations.
One of the
sorry, Andy, go for it.
Oh, sorry, I just quickly, one of the points that I picked out, many points Kenny just made, was the sharing of our woundedness. And I think humans actually connect through our woundedness much more deeply than we connect through our successes. You know, if you see somebody drive by in their Rolls Royce, you're probably not going, oh, he must have had a hard life. Your heart doesn't open. But when, unfortunately, when we've had things that we're not happy about or we've been hurt, we hide them because we think we'll be rejected if we share them. So having places and groups where we can actually bring that out and discover that we're loved more, not less, when we share that wound. I think it's, if there's, that is a part of International Men's Day for me, that we are creating a place where we can make those connections through Ireland and England and Australia, and this is the fabulous medium for it.
There's a connection
Creating
between
that place safe to express my woundedness.
That's it. There's a connection between, it doesn't matter what nationality, what country you're in, you know, with the emotional side of things, there's a connection between all of us. And when we realize that other people are going through, maybe not exactly the same way, but in a similar way, then, you know, it takes the pressure off ourselves to be perfect. What were you going to say before, Joseph?
Yeah, just there's several things came to mind there. You mentioned the 19 seconds, and certainly from my research, it appears that that's a lot longer. That's an eternity compared to what you might get in Europe, because it seems like 8 seconds is the norm in Europe. And obviously there's that the fear factor. What are they going to say? Let's stop it before it. And it's obviously a deeply held unconscious fear. But just when Kenny was talking about working with young people, I've also had a reluctance to work with younger people, and it's not something I tend to do as a rule. One of the things I've found is younger people so often are communicating through this, and it's primarily text messaging, and so often don't have the skills or the awareness to identify the emotional quotient or to express it, and it's like this purely one-dimensional world that they're living in as far as emotional communication, as far as communication is concerned, and it's got to be a major concern in terms of how kids are growing up with that and what they're experiencing aside from the phone. Now, I don't know, I don't have any insights into it, but it's just an observation that it's something I'd be very concerned about. So I don't know if Kenny or Andy have any contributions on that one.
What you've just said has given me a cold chill down my spine, because what I've been really shocked about in working with younger people is the not only the lack of facial expressions, but the lack of ability to look at another person, engage with another person, and it's all on the phone and the computer. What I've really been shocked with is to get to know the violence that they can get up to. So it's either zero or it's incredibly off the scale violent with people they know or with strangers. And I would never have imagined until they've told me what they have been up to, because knowing them, they can be so soft and unplugged, really quite unplugged as people. And I guess this is the equal and opposite. And I interviewed they call them incel, involuntary celibate is what it stands for. And when there's, you know, some of the big violence that we hear around the world, the killings and the shootings, etc., from young people, sometimes they say, I am an incel. And these people, the one that I spoke to, basically said that he hated himself so much, and he hated women because they hated him and disrespected him, and he hated men, for example, with jawlines or with popularity, you know, things like down to detail, so much that he couldn't leave his bedroom. And it was, with a lot of them, I finally found a place that I belong amongst other men who have only grief and self-loathing and hate, and it brews and it brews. And there's the importance, I was shocked at the importance of belonging, even if it's here. I mean, same with alcoholics belong together, drug addicts belong together. There are certain clubs that won't turn people away, and this is another one. And again, it's so disconnected and invisible, or so out there and incredibly violent and dangerous. And it's like another part takes them over. And I know this in myself, I know this in a lot of people close to me, is when I've done nasty things, it's like another part takes over. And it's the demon that's been denied rather than the demon put in front of me. So I know it, and if my shadow's in front of me, I know it, and I can bring it along. If I'm denying or avoiding it, or it's my secret, then it's going to be running me. And as I suppress it, I'm actually feeding it, and it's going to have to come out at some stage. But yeah, there is so much more to it, and I find it scary, and now I go there. And my paranoia, I don't know if it's the same for you, Joseph, is I didn't want to take away the lessons of younger people. I wanted them to go through their lives and not be overly influenced by me or by right or wrong or by anything. This is their experience. Where now I feel the experience needs holding and some guidance that they don't seem to be getting for their good and the good of people around them. It really broke a rule for me. I was so scared of tampering, influencing.
So I watched all the teenagers, especially if I was traveling back from Sydney to Newcastle on the train, 2.5, 3 hour trip. And I'd watch some of the young ones on a Friday night and the way they're yahooing and carrying on and just being a damn nuisance to everybody. And I used to look at it and be quite upset about it and thinking, what's wrong with our younger generation? But I stopped and I thought about it, and I realised that there's rites of passage, there's processes and things that we need to go through. And I likened it to, the animal world. We got young bucks in the season of, the rutting season, when they're actually butting heads against each other and they're challenging and they're finding their positions. And I realised that adolescents need to do that. But this is one of the reasons why we couldn't stand back completely. Once they've worked out their position, where they fit into the scheme of things with each other, that was when it was time for the older men, the ones who have been through that themselves before, to then step in and guide them and take them, say, right, you've got that position. Now, how do you use that energy in a positive fashion and move forward? And helping them to do that. And this is where I see what you're doing now, Kenny, is doing exactly that. That was a necessary part that, because of our reluctance to get involved in that, wasn't being done. So you're bringing back, as I see it, you're bringing back a part of the rite of passage that the boys have not had because of us looking at it and going, oh, well, that's taboo. That's not something we want to go near. So when you're gaining courage in yourself, you're helping them to find the direction in themselves as well. We're all connected. This is the whole thing. And I think with International Men's Day, this is what we all need to do, is look at at our point in our lives, what is our real role? What's our role? What's inside of us? What do we need to do? But what's the role of the people around us? What role do we fill with them? Because again, it's coming together. And I think in those sort of things, when we start doing that, that's when we can really celebrate the men who are doing that, because they're the ones that are going to change the future. And I see it in the way you guys have been talking and the conversations I've been having recently and that with others. There's more and more people doing that. So I think we're definitely moving forward, and that on itself deserves to be celebrated.
Yeah, I think the concept of not influencing young people so that they have their own experience has been the problem, because now you have 12-year-olds leading 12-year-olds and gang situations and where we really need to be able to if we're going to influence someone, influencing them in a way that builds them as a character. And, you know, one of the outgrowths of the men's weekend I did and all that was a young men's weekend. It's been going for 30 years. And my friend Brad Leslie in Vancouver has been spearheading that every year. You know, 30, 40, 50 young men, we don't call them boys, experience being together in an environment that is supportive and masculine and sensitive. And that's, we have to be brave enough to step up and set examples, because generations of hands off has led us to where we are.
Between those 12-year-olds, leading 12-year-olds, as you've said, there was no men around for them, because the natural progression should have been to turn around and look for somebody who was older to take them, you know, to guide them through the next level. It wasn't influencing, it was fulfilling that role that was totally missed. Now we've got, as you said, we've got, you know, kids telling other kids what they should be doing and how they move forward. Kids that have got no idea on doing things for the wrong reason.
I worked with teenagers in care for 10 years, and you know, sometimes you would wonder, well, why is he like this? And you'd see the family report and realize that this child has been navigating a maze of emotions and violence to survive, but without any guidance. It's just, you know, we had 12-year-old prostitutes, 12-year-old female prostitutes, I'd been attacked a few times, and it just, these kids were a perfect example of being, their only task was to survive long enough to get away, but they weren't supported in any way to be able to be independent. And over that 10 years, it started to be my window on adolescence. And fortunately, my partner at the time worked in a school, and I would see at graduation all these fantastic kids doing these wonderful things. So it's not all of them, but for the ones that need us and need guidance and need support, the context has to be there. We have to have that understanding that we have, and I have, a responsibility to my community and to my brothers and my sisters.
I think what you've said there, Andrew, for me sums up what International Men's Day is for me this year, which is to start living beyond the surviving. And so many men are still surviving the boy stuff because they haven't known how to stop. They've never been safe enough, or maybe and it comes in layers. And I will never be fixed, and I am not broken. But I know the more that I want out of life, something's going to come up for me to heal and for me to feel, so life can open up again. But that's the bottom line, is meeting myself in that depth, in those sacred spaces of trauma, drama, broken spiritedness, and also being able to meet other people while they're there, because I can meet myself there. And for me, that's exactly what it is this year.
The big fear so many people have, isn't it? Meeting that I will meet myself and meet myself in those broken places. That if we can find, or not if, when we can find ways to do that and to share that experience, then things really do open up. And I'm quite in awe, actually, listening to you, Kenny, in particular here. The work you're doing. I certainly want to hear more about it.
Yeah, well done. I think one of the things we're missing as well is that most of these kids have no reason, no purpose, and no meaning in their lives. And so it's just one day after the next and it's the same. So how do I entertain myself? How do I engage myself in something? And so the easiest or most, excitement producing thing. Oh, sorry, one of my pups. There is no meaning, there is no purpose and no guidance, and that's something that I work with all of my clients around. Why am I here? Who am I and why am I here? And giving them an opportunity to connect with a sense of self and to have that accepted as it is in the world, I think is massive.
Seem to have a tendency to want to put people in boxes, and we're doing that in education. The kids are all going through the same training to go for the same jobs. There's no identity that they've got, so how are they going to find a purpose in life if they don't have a personal identity? And that's one of the things that we need to be working with, so that, because there's no two people on the planet who are the same. Joshua knows that as well from all the profiling work he does. Everybody's uniquely different. Everybody's had different experiences. No two people have had the same story, and therefore everyone who's got a story, and that every story is valuable. It's unique, and that means every person on the planet. When we start to realize that, and we realize in that uniqueness, then people can find their own purpose, because it won't be the same as anybody else. And if we can have those conversations with them and find out and uncover what's really driving them, what they really want to do in life. And for a lot of them, they can't answer that question. So it's really up to the rest of us to find ways in which to ask questions, not tell them, but ask questions to draw it out of them. So we're going back to having communications and conversations. I'll give you an example. Last night we had one of the women, when we asked what did the women want from men, and one of the responses came back, we want men to be solid in themselves. And I noticed there were going to be a few comments made about that, so I very quickly said, well, what does solid mean? We need to understand what the other person means by each of the words, because we all got our own value of each word. But if we don't understand how the other person interprets that word, we're going to get it wrong. So we asked a few questions, and the result came back that they wanted men to know themselves. Now, that was what they believed by being solid. That was a result of knowing yourself, was being solid in yourself. So we were trying, is that a tough person or whatever? So it's having those questions where, when somebody's talking, ask more questions, and then validate those questions by asking, well, what I'm hearing is this, is that what you mean? And keep having those conversations. And so the person realizes you're spending time on them, that you're interested in finding out, which straight away, they've got to start thinking of themselves, well, maybe I am important. Somebody is actually holding space and listening to me. I think that's another thing I'd like to see come out of International Men's Day, is men realizing that role. It's not about ego, but I'm going to tell everybody what they should do. No, as Kenny was saying before, and that we're not my brother. I'm not my brother's keeper, but I'm my brother's support. And we start looking at it that way. That'll change things, I believe. I think, Joseph, you were going to say something there a moment ago, were you?
Yeah, there's just something I've been learning. I've been studying a lot of the work of various former FBI trainers and people in that field, in negotiation, interrogation, counterinterrogation, counterintelligence. And I've been very pleasantly surprised to find a lot of what the best guys were talking about was building trust and empathy. And it's learning to ask the right questions at the right time in the right way to create that space where people are willing to open. And I certainly wish I'd known some of this stuff when I was working as a therapist, because it would have helped enormously. And also what the FBI guys talk about called elicitation, where you're drawing information out of people without actually asking questions. And it's a very powerful skill because people don't feel threatened. And if you create that space where people feel at ease, feel relaxed, feel listened to, and feel listened to is the operative term, then they're more likely to open up and reveal what's really going on, which has got to be a massive, massive help to them and to us and to the people around us.
My next appointment this morning is where half a dozen of the men who I've trained to hold groups, we're going to be holding groups for therapists, male and female therapists, so they can experience being in a group and learn how to listen to us, and what has and hasn't worked. So it's coming from us rather than the theory of us. And it's so exciting. So the first half, our daily groups are an hour. The first half is that, and the second half is questions and answers. And we did this last week for Sunderland University, which is the only course we have in the UK that has a male psychology module. It's like, apparently no one's interested. But at least we get to take part and get practical and real with real people who want to listen, who want to make a difference. So many men have done their therapy and then after that room, they're alone. But it feels like there's a bridge to build. And it feels like that's a lot of therapists send men to the groups for that bridge. But I feel that there's so much we can give to the industries and the carers, etc. So there is that listening. And male and female, no, masculine and feminine and different types communicate in different ways. So to find out how and how to listen and relate is worth its weight and not necessarily that difficult.
I think the thought of talking about male and female is one thing, but as you said, talking about the masculine and feminine, knowing that masculine and feminine is in all of us, both men and women, takes away the opportunity to blame the other gender. And I think in having that conversation actually brings us closer together on that level as well. So, my belief has always been the most important thing I'll ever learn is the next thing I learn after I think I know everything. So I know that with the work that you're doing, Kenny, I want to know more. And, Joseph, I want to know more about these FBI guys and understand that side, because even though I'm about to turn 70 next year, my attitude to life is I'm always going to be learning. I'm not going to fall off the perch in a long time. So I've got plenty of life leading up in front of me. So there's a lot more I can learn in the meantime. And I know, talking to Andy as well, with the information that we've discussed in the past, you and I need to have a few more conversations as well. So I just wanted to thank all of you being here today, but I'd like to finish off on one thing, and that is you guys are all starting your day. My day is just about finished. It's after 8 o'clock. Oh my God, it's after 8 o'clock. We've gone a little bit longer than what I thought, but I'd still like to finish off with, what would you like to see as you're entering your 19th, the International Men's Day? What would you like to see in your society happen today? What would be something small that each man out there could actually do today that may plant a seed within their own lives? Who'd like to jump in?
Do you know, the first thing that crossed my mind was eye contact and a raised eyebrow. That simple connection, it's nothing scary or processy, but eye contact and a hello, that's it.
Yeah, that's great. When I moved to London from Vancouver, the change in was very striking. I've never met a skill set that the English seem to have of being able to ignore you when you're standing right beside them. You can actually not exist. And It's been highly honed and polished to a point where you can turn to someone, say something to them, and not exist. So I think that would be a great thing to happen in England for sure. So I'm with you, Kenny, on that.
And Joseph.
I'd love to see, I'd love to see eye contact and a smile. So few smiles.
Yeah. And take that little bit of time when you do the smile and the look, and try and put that expression on your face where you go, I understand, I know. There's a connection in that. So I know that you go through initiation, you never talk about it to the boys because they'd lose that experience. You don't talk about it to the women because it's none of their business, because they have their own business and men have theirs. And you don't need to mention it to anybody else who's been through, because you know that, and they know what you went through. And the look between the men who have been through initiation, it's just that smile, the raising the eyebrows, the knowing look. And in that knowing look, there's a strong connection between them. And I'd like to see on what you've said, just extend it to that little bit, just take that little bit more time and just look at the person. Don't just look at it and smile and, okay, I've done my bit. Take a little bit of time to do it. Drink it in, take it in, and just see how the smiles get bigger.
So acknowledge them.
Exactly.
Like a nod, or it's a look, a smile, but also
That's it.
I see you. I see you.
Exactly. You know, saying to somebody, actually showing them, not so much saying them, but showing them by that nod, I see you. That goes all the way to the heart. And it softens their heart and it softens yours in the process. So I think that's absolutely beautiful. So guys, thank you very much for tonight. And I've really enjoyed it. I've had a long day, but I can still talk to you guys for hours. But I'm going to let you get on with your day. So first of all, Andy and Joseph and Kenny, thank you very much for being here. And to everybody else, I hope you got a lot out of it. And as we go, you know these guys, you've seen them in the Campfire Project before. So if you've got any questions, connect with them. This is what it's all about. Reach out. So again, thank you very much, gentlemen.
All right. Thanks, Alan.
Pleasure. Thank you so much.
Great
Enjoy.
to be back.
And to everybody else, we'll see you on the next Campfire. Bye for now.